this was during that time period. All these letters were flying in, these boycott letters, and I was trying to figure out who are all these people, and I could tell by the names they were all white folks. And from the places, the communities they were sent from, I knew these were white people sending in these letters and, trying to ban my group. And what happened was, what was odd was I get handed the letter and I'm told one sentence, deal with it. And I'm like, okay, this should be fun. And I said, okay, I know what to do with this. And one thing I noticed about that FBI letter, it also had quoted the same part of the song as those 100 or so letters that I had called the people to figure out who was behind this. So it turned out the FBI letter was sent because the agent that wrote the letter and signed the letter was a follower of this particular Christian religious group that Tipper Gore and Susan Baker, the wife of the Secretary of State, had contacted and said, boycott this record. Here's the address of Priority Records. Write a letter, and here's 2 lines of the song. So this guy at the FBI doing this did it just because essentially a church group told him to, who had been told to at the behest of one Tipper Gore and Mrs. Al Gore. And it was just bizarre. And so I started contacting attorneys. And I knew quite a bit about law, and in my job I needed to know about law, certain types of law. But it was a violation of the First Amendment for anyone in a government office to try to intimidate anyone from free speech, even if that free speech is set forth in a recording studio. And a lot of the artists back then didn't know their rights, but I knew their rights, and I at least would tell them, And so this was a violation, and we got that FBI agent demoted. I got together with an attorney, and we got him demoted from the FBI.
Now that right there, I never knew that you got him demoted. That had to have been a good feeling, because usually the cops,
but at the same time, the mail I was receiving was like open and taped shut. It was kind of a stressful period, but I very much believed in what I was doing, so I wasn't scared. I was more annoyed. But I had been harassed a few times by law enforcement in that period. There was some weird things that happened, but more so concerning Ice-T. But
that's scary.
Yeah, but that opened the door.
Yeah.
But this was a really important fight, because their fight, and see, Jerry could have punked out. Jerry Heller could have punked out and said, even in Detroit, or was it Cleveland? I can't remember now. Detroit, when they got, cited for, obscenity, and the same with 2 Live Crew. They could have said, oh, no, we're going to be scared. We're not going to fight this. But we did, and much to Jerry's credit, he didn't punk out. I saw artists that got scared. I mean, I remember, I don't want to mention any names, but I had a lot of artists play a city down south called Columbus, not Columbus, Georgia. I think it was Columbus, South Carolina, and I was always having problems with police there, threatening my artists, telling them if they played they were going to go to jail, telling them they couldn't curse on stage, blah, blah, and, it was really important we stood up to that, because I don't believe any of this was really about the curse words. I think they were afraid of the political speech, and I think they were afraid of the fighting back, the lyrics that fought back. I don't think this was really I think they used the curse words to try to shut us up, but I don't think in their minds the real issue was the curse words.
No. They
I want to go back
police.
to something about that FBI thing. I want to go back to that.
Yeah.
I remember at the time, I did see the gravity, the importance, because this was the first time the FBI had ever gone after a record album and tried to shut it up. And so I felt I had a very heavy responsibility to make sure I didn't mess anything up, because I wanted to make sure whoever came after N.W.A., whoever it was going to have their freedom, whether it was in a month, 10 years, 100 years. So I knew I had a heavy responsibility with what I was going to do. And I think the FBI thought N.W.A. was going to be an easy target because no one had heard of Priority Records. Relatively few people had heard of N.W.A. So I knew it was, really important that the ball went through that hoop, and that I wasn't going to miss. And, there was something I was going to say about that, and I just lost my train of thought. I'm going to remember this. Oh gosh, I can't remember the thought I was going to lead to, but yeah, it was just, now I remember just that it was so important to me that I saw them as the FBI and the police and Tipper Gore and the anti-free speech people and the racist people as, I saw them as potentially having a piece of propaganda. And I saw how it could be very easy for a headline to run that said, rap's so terrible, FBI has to get involved, And I was determined as a publicist, I was going to kill that headline before it came out. And so I had to work fast. And, one thing I was very grateful for as a publicist, when you work with people like yourself, you work with the media, you work with the press, if anyone understands the importance of the First Amendment, it's music critics like yourself, and writers, because they understand how important free speech is.
Oh,
Well, yeah.
Definitely.
So I was really blessed to have such great allies in the press that understood where we were coming from, because people could have sensationalized this and gone on the side of the FBI, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And much to the credit of the music media, I don't know it would have been the same today, because people are so into sensationalism and getting the most hits online. I don't know I would have had that kind of allies today if this all happened today. But I think people back then really, I think they maybe did understand the historical context that I brought up, that this what really was the first generation of black artists that were free to speak in the recording studio and say what they wanted to. And that was one good thing about Eric and Jerry financing the album, because if it had been, and this is nothing against Warner Brothers, it's nothing against Atlantic, it's nothing against Sony, if I or whoever, I do not believe if that album had come out on a major, it would have seen the light of day after that FBI label came in.